All right. I think we're recording now, from what I can tell. Linda, if
Yes.
you can state and spell your first and last name, I always have to ask that just so we make it right if we have a super in front of your name on screen. So say and spell your first and last name.
Okay. Linda Levine. Lindalevine.
And are you as far as the order of the siblings, are you the oldest daughter?
I'm,
Oldest?
I am the oldest, yes.
Okay. All right. Now tell me about the story about how your mother and now that this so excuse me, T Euclid was your stepfather then, correct?
That's correct.
And your all right, was he stepfather to how many?
Just Linda.
Just Linda,
Just me.
just you. Okay, so take me back to well, you were in what grammar school or high school or middle school?
No, I was about this. We're going back to 1955,
Okay.
and mother and I lived in Timbrook with her parents, my grandparents, and Farmers Telephone finally put phones in the area, and we got our first telephone. The phone book was about 5 pages. That's all that was on it. There were very few people who had phones at that time. And Euclid there were party lines. And so there were several people on the party line. And there were girls in the community there he lived right where the house is now. There was a big white house that his grandmother, Ma Slater, lived in, and he lived with her. And he got his first phone. And he had one of the girls in the neighborhood read the names out of the phone book to see how many people he knew and who he called. So he found J.E. Johnson, which was my grandfather, my mother's father. And he called. And the person he got on the phone was me. And we started talking, and he would tell me stories. He would call maybe, I don't know if it was once a week, I don't really remember, but often. And he would tell me stories, and he would ask me, what I was doing in school. He wanted to hear all about me and what I was doing. So for the first at least a year, maybe even longer, I'm not real sure, being young, I was 7. I talked to him. Mother never talked to him. It was always me. I did all the communication. And then Christmas came around, and that might have been the first or second Christmas, I don't remember. He invited us to come to see him. He said he had something for me. So Mother and I went when he was living with Ma Slater. We went there, and he had a little broom and mop that he had made and gave me. And that was the first time that we had seen him, and the first time Mom had seen him since they were in college together.
Now your mother.
And shortly after that was when he and Mom started their romance, and they started talking on the phone, and they started their courtship.
Okay. That's great. Great summary of the whole. If you can, because that helps me writing the actual article itself, the separate article, separate from the video piece. If you can sum up that kind of like a 20, just as short as you can, just sum up. I was involved with this. There was a party line back at the time, and T Euclid would call us. Now this party line, I've heard about these party lines, but I was confused. I thought it was like a homework hotline or something, and so I'd gotten confused on that. So the party line he was just curious, wanting to get to know some of the youngsters in the community. Is that what was going on?
No, it wasn't really youngsters. And now we lived in Timbrook, and he lived right there where the house is, right near Mary's, right where you are.
Right.
But he knew so many people.
Sure.
That he would he wanted to know, he wanted to be able to call and talk to people, because up until this time, nobody had phones, so they couldn't call. But at that time, everybody had a party line, and there were about 4 people on a line. So if I'm talking on the phone and you're on my party line, you can pick your phone up and hear my conversation or join into my conversation, but you can't make a call out as long as I'm on the phone. That's how the party line worked.
Right.
Now, was Papa was he the postmaster then, Linda?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
Good to see you.
no. Papa was not. He had a stroke.
Okay.
Now, he was postmaster at 5, but that was when he was much younger. He was also in the legislature, but he was postmaster, but he was much younger.
Okay. So, to kind of sum it all up, just so the part that I would use for the video portion, because all the information she gave me was great. I love the fact that I didn't know that it went on for a whole year, and then they met at Christmas, and the story about the mop and the broom that he gave to you, and then that's how your mother and him reconnected. So when you went to his house that night, you had no clue that he knew your mother.
No, I did know.
You did know.
I did know because he had told me, and Mom had remembered that they washed dishes at Sneed together.
But we're just friends at
Yes.
the time, right? Just
Oh,
friends,
he had lots of
acquaintances.
girlfriends there. The girls loved him.
Okay.
They loved him because he was just a very charismatic, outgoing, loving person. And so if he needed any help with, reading the books for school, the girls would read to him, and that's how he studied.
Yeah. Okay. So they had that friendship from all those years before. Well, say
Yes.
maybe 10, 15, 20 years before. Okay.
Right.
And how long had this is just an extra question, then we're going to get to the summary, and then I promise we're done because we've made you wait so
Okay.
long. Your father and your mother had been divorced for how long when this all, had it been a number of years? Had you and your mother been living on your own for a while?
Yes, I was 3 when when my mother and father were divorced, and we moved from California back to Alabama and lived with Mother's parents. So it had been at least 5 years.
Okay. So you were about the age of about 8 or 9.
I was 7
You were
in
7.
1955 when we actually connected.
Okay. All right. So now that I've gotten kind of all the nuts and the bolts of everything, at least from your experience, your end on how they met, let's go back and do a quick recap of the party line. I was involved with the party line. Were you and several of your friends that were involved on this party line? And Mr. Raines was wanting to get, he knew of a bunch of people in the area, and he thought he recognized the name there, the Thompson name, I guess is what it was. Is that correct?
Johnson.
Yeah. And
he recognized the name. He knew Mother's name when he knew her was Nell Johnson.
Right.
So he recognized the last name, and
so just natural curiosity.
She was from Pembroke.
Right. And just so through natural curiosity, just like, today, if we ran into somebody in public, and asked them if they say they're from so-and-so, you immediately think to ask, do you know any of this family or that family?
Exactly.
That was kind of how it went. And so from there, you guys, over a period of time, this is where I kind of want you to recap. You're involved with this party line, and Mr. Raines was also on that same line, and there was several conversations.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, he wasn't on that one. He was.
No, the party lines, everybody who had a phone people didn't have individual phones. They grouped 3, 4, I think 4 was the maximum.
There was 4 on this road.
Like party line. So
lived on this road back then.
Where my phone, it was my grandfather and his name, but where our party line was, we had 4 neighbors who were on the same line. Then Euclid had, where his was, he had 4 neighbors on the same line. And
so these party lines were, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
These party lines were basically just so you could communicate with your neighbors.
No, it was a regular phone, but they didn't have enough single numbers. You'd have to make sure everybody would. if anybody was like, I'd pick up and Armidi and